Hello, and welcome to Network Collective, a video roundtable podcast in which network engineers talk about networking, technology, and today, careers. We'll be talking specifically about what we wish we had known when we started our careers off in networking many years ago. What we have with us today, 4 outstanding guests with tremendous background, tremendous experience, and insight into this topic in particular. So with us today, we have, in alphabetical order, Daniel Dib, Denise Donohue, Lindsay Hill, and Mathew Norwood. I'd also like to welcome all of you viewing the live stream right now. This is a community-based podcast. I say that all the time because that's very important to us. So we encourage you to follow along on Twitter using hashtag Network Collective so you can ask questions, make comments, or post silly pictures of us if you like. Apparently that's a thing now. So I'd like to take a moment now for our guests, who are really the crux of the show today, to introduce themselves and tell us where we can find them online. So again, in alphabetical order, Daniel, let's start with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Dib and I'm from Sweden. I'm a senior network architect. I have a CCIE, CCDE certification, and you can find me online in a lot of places, my blog and a lot of other publications. So nice to be here.
Great. And it's really great to have you here, Daniel. I know you wrote about this topic not too long ago, so I'm very much interested in hearing your perspective here. Denise, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Denise Donohue. I'm a business architect with Net Craftsman. I'm only a CCIE, not a DE, so I'm a step below Daniel.
Only, yeah.
Let's see, you can find me on Twitter at Lady Networker. And I blog for Net Craftsman, so you can find when I do rarely blog, you can find them on Net Craftsman's website.
Great, thanks Denise. Really happy that you're here as well. Next we have Lindsay, and Lindsay, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi there, so I'm Lindsay Hill. I'm originally from New Zealand, which explains the accent. I'm based in the US at the moment, as I now work for Brocade as a product manager. I'm in the part of Brocade that's going to be going to Extreme, so fingers crossed that's all going to go well. I too am just a CCIE, Denise, so we're in good company, but you have a lot more Cisco books on your bookshelf behind you than I do. So you can find me online at Northland Boy on Twitter, or my blogs at lkhill.com.
Great, thanks Lindsay. And last but certainly not least, we have Mathew with us. And Mathew, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hello, I'm Mathew Norwood. I'm a systems engineer for Aerohive Networks. I cover the Mid-South, so I'm down here in the Tennessee, Kentucky area, and you can find me online usually at Twitter at Mathew Norwood. I actually am not a CCIE. I am a CWNE, but that's a whole different can of worms, so happy to be here.
Great, thank you. And I'm Phil Gervasi, joined by our co-host Yvonne Sharp and Jordan Martin. So let's dive right in. Today we have a full house with some serious talent and some serious experience, so pay close attention here. We've all been around the block a few times, and we've all reflected one time or another on those things that we wish we knew, maybe did differently in our careers, looking back in hindsight. But today's show is not about regret, okay? We're not going to wallow in the self-pity of our mistakes and bad decisions, because I have a lot of them, and that would take a long time. But hindsight is 20/20, so what we are going to talk about and ultimately flesh out is what, looking back at our careers and when we first started, when we were those young pups, what do we wish we knew then that we know now? So let me start asking the question. Since we've all been in this field for more than a few years now and have our share of victories, failures, and scars. I have scars on my head, by the way, physical scars from getting cut on Nexus switches. What do you all here wish that, let me rephrase. What do you all here know now that you wish you knew when you first started out?
I'll jump in.
And anybody can go.
I'll jump in. No, go
There we go.
ahead, Denise. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll flip a coin, a virtual coin. For me, I kind of thought it was all about me. I had to learn so much and be the best technical person I could. And that I spent a lot of time, a lot of work doing that. I wish I had known to be more aware of the community around me and to build more relationships with other people that I was working with and other people outside of my work. Because now as I've gotten, I don't want to say older, but older, and got
more experience.
More
experience.
Yeah. I see how much value there is. I mean, just look at this example of this podcast. Look how much value there is in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well. I wish I had spent more time building my network, like the social network, not the actual networks, and probably finding a mentor. I think that would be helpful as well, to someone experienced to guide me a bit in the beginning of my career. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think for me, what was, if I could go back, kind of a big thing for me was, when you first start out, and it's a fire hose, depending on what you're doing. When I started, it was, I had the Unix, Windows, networking, and I finally just made peace with the fact that I will never ever know it all. I will never ever be deep in more than a few areas, and it's even hard just even in one area to have really, really deep technical ability, and you have to make peace with that. Otherwise, you go insane. You're reading, and you're it's very easy to work yourself to the point where you get burnt out simply trying to get to the level that maybe your mentors are at, or other people are at who've been doing it for a while, and just chill out and realize you're going to have a whole career and maybe learn 10% of what you really want to learn.
Yeah. I have maybe a little bit of a different experience than you guys here. I'm in my late 30s, almost 40, and I started my career, my professional life as a school teacher. I taught high school English, and I didn't get into IT at all until I was 27, 28, something like that. And I spent a year on a help desk, which was a phenomenal experience, by the way. I mean, all I did was just learn, like you said, from a fire hose. It was just consuming that. However, looking back, I said this wasn't going to be all about regrets. And here I am. Well, in any case, one thing that I regret is not hitting it harder as far as learning those skills sooner. So I'm almost 40 still, and now pursuing the CCIE. And my goodness, is it difficult at this stage in life. So, one thing I would like to do is go back in a time machine and tell myself, just focus now. Don't wait a year. Get this done now while you have the freedom and the time and the energy and wherewithal,
Man, that's a two-way street. And so, and when I look at that, I agree with what you're saying, because it is much easier to do those harder tasks when you don't have the stuff outside of work eating up your time. So, kids and family is something that will eat up time, and they're great things, but they make doing something like a CCIE difficult. The other side is like I've found so much value in not being a specialist early in my career.
Mm-hmm.
So
for sure,
in just being a generalist, being the guy, I think it was Mathew who said it, that kind of being responsible for everything, being responsible for servers and databases and voice systems. But you get the being responsible for everything helped give me a broader view of what that specialist role is supposed to be doing, and being able to work with other groups. And so, like, I question, is it better to go deep early on, right, and get those things out of the way, and really start early and specialize in one thing and become very, very good at that one thing, or is it better to be a generalist?
I think that you need to have at least one area where you are reasonably deep.
Agree with that.
You're not a total, an absolute specialist at it. You need to have at least one area where you have a fairly deep knowledge of that, and then that's like your base. Everything else is grounded around that. So what's the T-shaped skills, I think, is the term that people use these days.
Yeah, I tend to agree with it. Go ahead, Yvonne, please.
No, I was just going to say, for me, like, if there's one word that encapsulates my early career, it'd be insecurity. Like, I really felt like I had to prove myself and prove that I had intelligence and prove that I could do all kinds of things. And I look back, and so often I rushed things trying to prove something. And now I can step back, and with the revelation that we can't know everything, and what Mathew was saying, there's no way to know it all, and that your value is not in being able to pull everything from memory at this very moment. It's being able to solve problems across an entire stack and so now I'm slower. Slower in a good way. I'm not so hurried to try and come up with an answer so that people will think I'm smart. It's that slowing down and thinking through all the details, because that ultimately, slow is fast when you're building architectures and thinking through problems.
I think one of the related things to that, and one of the things I wish I'd known, was how to get access to help. We talk about building social networks and things. When I was started out, this was early 2000s, so social networks weren't such a thing online. It was more actually real world networks of people that I had. But it was knowing how and when to say escalate to TAC. So often I would figure out the problem myself, and I'd spend a lot of time going through logs, whatever it was, manuals, whatever. I'd figure out. Eventually, I'd get there. I'd only go to TAC, say, when I had a known bug and I really wanted to go to them and say, hey, here's this bug, fix. This is the issue. You need to fix this. But when I look back on it, I think, you know what? I probably should have escalated those things sooner. It's okay to not know everything yourself, and to be able to and say, you know what? I could spend the next 3 weeks digging down on this, or I could find someone who does know the answer and go to them now and get some help. Not to say that you rush to them. You've still got to figure some stuff out yourself, but to not feel that I have to do it on my own. That's what it's about.
I think that's the typical newbie mistake. You take things personally, and by dog, you're going to get to the bottom of this thing. As opposed to reaching out, even if to TAC or to other people in your network that you've built up now, because you know to do that.
Yeah, I think some of the best learning experiences I've had, I don't know about the best, but a lot of really great learning experiences I had were on those extended TAC calls that I wish I recorded. So when you get a good tech engineer, qualifying that. So
I was actually thinking the opposite.
Come on.
No. I agree with everything that's been said. I'm not trying to be contrary. I think of the things I've learned when I didn't know what I was looking for, but still trying to find a problem. If someone had handed me the solution, I would have learned that one thing, and instead I learned 10. And so I guess you have to weigh it against the impact. Right, I think I agree completely with what Lindsay said. Is that if we're talking about a business critical system and I can't figure it out within an hour or two, I should be starting a phone call, right? That should be going on, because the business needs me to solve the problem. They don't need me to learn. Yeah. If this can sit for a little bit, I think there can be some value in digging in and not necessarily running to support immediately, because yes, you'll be able to solve your problem, but I always learn tangentially. So I'm looking at this problem and I don't just learn that. I go down the wrong road for a little bit and I learn something about that, and I go down the wrong road and I learn something about that. And so there's a balance to that, I think.
So encapsulate that in a way that you would what would you tell yourself if you were just starting out?
That's a hard question.
How do you wrap that up? Said,
yeah.
How would you wrap that? What would you say? Hey, Jordan from 15 years ago, chill out.
Well, yeah. Tech. Well, no, I think it is. I think the critical piece of information there is you need to understand what the things are that you're supporting mean to the business, because you need to know whether or not you need to be on TAC, because you're absolutely right. Sometimes as engineers, we see it as a failure if we have to call somebody else to help us out.
For sure.
And I don't think that's true at all. I think we pay for very expensive support contracts for a reason. Use them, right? If they're going to solve the problem faster, that's the reason why you have them.
Yeah.
But if there's a lot of learning opportunities in there. So I think the critical piece of that isn't necessarily do you call TAC or don't you call TAC. It's to understand the criticality of your systems, which I think leads to a bigger issue, and that is learn your business. It's not just about the technology. And that's definitely one of my takeaways is learning the business.
Yeah.
Because what we do, I learn it more and more. I mean, I feel like I'm preaching like I'm the experienced guy, but I'm not. I'm still learning this. If you walk into an environment, all the stuff we do ties to some sort of business objective. I don't always look at the world that way. I look at it as protocols and routers and switches, because that's what I'm used to.
Yeah.
But I think the more that you can see the world through those eyes, the more you're going to be able to be valuable to your employers.
Yeah. I think when I started out, part of it is you're just there's so much that you're taking in when you're young that what's the perceptual narrowing, I think is the term, but you can only focus on what's right in front of you. And you're overwhelmed by all these technology things, since you're just focusing on that, and you you miss those other broader business things going on. Why are we doing this? What's the real problem that we're trying to solve here? It's easy to get overwhelmed with that. As I've gotten a little bit older, I'm more aware of what's going on from a business perspective. What are the pressures that are going on? Why? Or these days, if I'm talking to a customer, why is a customer asking me about one particular thing? Is it they're asking me a technical question, but what's the business driver behind that? And that's something that I think when I was starting out, I wish I had had a better or had taken a little more time to understand that. Not saying I should have spent all my time with business analysts or something like that, but maybe spent a little bit more time talking to my manager when we had big projects or things like that coming along, saying, okay, what's the real thing that matters here to this business? We're doing this. What's the real reason? What's the key thing behind this? Or find out that, hey, you know what? Actually, we're working on this project here, but actually there's some other thing that's causing a whole lot of pain that we really need to solve. But maybe it's just not getting there's a mismatch, and often you'd see actually be that mismatch between what the technology people are doing and what the business people want. There's often a mismatch in expectations.
Yeah.
I wish I could have closed that better. I still wish I could close it better.
I guess maybe I was lucky. I spent first 9 years I was in IT, I was in the military, and our jobs were to kill people and break things, and I didn't have to worry about understanding the business, because the business was basically go drop bombs. So I was lucky. I just had to sit there and grind out, and not pull all my hair out. It wasn't until I got out that it was, trying to understand. I had an interview for I think it was my second job when I got out of the military, and the guy asked me, he said, okay, so everything goes down and you got all these different systems, what do you do? And I said, well, what's most important to the business? And he said, you're the only guy that's actually said that. And I thought, hey, I ended up getting that job, but
Yep.
I mean, but it's kind of a no-brainer when you get a little bit. I guess when everyone gets a little bit older and you get a little more perspective, it's okay. You've got all these different moving parts, but you got to tell me. I'm a geek. I'm not a CFO or CEO. Tell me what's important to you. People say things like, "Well, email's not important in a DR plan." Any of us been around environments where email went down?
Yeah,
That's
life.
super. Yeah, so it's just weird, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the business side that's not something that's easily taught, and usually not included in college or vendor training or anything like that. And also you have to be ready, like Mathew said, that you probably need to be a bit older to start having more interest in the business side. In the beginning we're mostly just focusing a lot on technology, and we tend to forget to include the business, and people are a lot more valuable if they can translate between the business and the technology side. So.
Daniel, do you think that's just a matter of age when you say older, maturing in your thought process? But do you think that there's more so a matter of your experience working on the networks and maybe a combination of that? What's your thought there?
Yeah, I don't think it's just age. It's probably what you've been through in your career. So if you've been through situations that's like a network down situation, then you might have a better understanding of what the impact actually is to the business, and gain the understanding that the business could actually go out of business if you're down for too long, especially in these days. So
yeah. I do remember when I was starting out, specifically when I was on the command line, confession time, okay? Here we go. I would have, my 2 monitors, and by the time I was really serious in a senior position, I had my 4 monitors, and it was ridiculous, right? Just nonsense. Today I don't do that, but anyway, I had the CLI, maybe a couple of different routers up, different things, and on one of the monitors I had, a blog or some Cisco documentation, but when anyone walked by, I had to minimize it quick, because I didn't want anyone knowing that I was looking that stuff up. and I hid the fact that I had to. You're laughing inside right now, or
we're laughing with you.
No, I was gonna.
All of us. To be honest, I don't normally hide the documentation page when people walk past. That's, that was the documentation on the screen. It wasn't.
Not anymore. I don't. Not now. The first thing I do is I say to my coworker, "Hey, let's Google that." Oh, I saw a blog. I don't know. I'm so much more quick to say I don't know and throw my hands up and let's look it up and figure this out. Where when I first started out, I did not do that. I think if I could go back, I would just give myself permission and say it's okay to not know everything, and even more so, it's okay not to be an arrogant jerk like I was and pretend like you knew everything, because nobody else does. So just be transparent.
We all have to go through that phase of knowing everything, though, you know? We all, you know, it's like that phase of you do it and then you grow out of it.
Yeah, and people see through that so quickly. I mean, they know nobody knows everything, and everybody knows that. So when you're trying to be the one who knows everything, so I guess that's good advice to your younger self. Don't pretend to be the one who knows everything, because that's so obvious when you're trying to fake it.
I'm sure I embarrassed myself more than once, but here we are.
You could probably, I think we all did.
Yeah.
So Denise and I had a conversation kind of online a couple days ago about the pace of change in this industry and how maybe when we started out we didn't really realize how much would change over time. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, on coping with that, or how to think about that if you're early on in this business, or maybe just thinking about getting started in IT?
I think you got to, and this is very hard to do when you're just starting out, but you really do, and I know it's so overused, but you really got to know 5-10 years from now, or at least have a general idea of where you want to be. So like I started planning my career path, if you will, probably 10 years ago, and it didn't go exactly how I wanted it to. There was some luck involved. There was just some other things that happened, but I'm kind of at the place I wanted to be, but it really took a lot of thought in my mind in terms of where do I think things are going in the future. I mean, and maybe it was, I used to attend Cisco user group meetings here in Nashville, probably 10 years ago when they were really, really big. And people would show up, looking for a job. And I remember hearing people saying they were, I've had a career in mainframe security. That was, at one time, that was amazing. But you really have to look, and that's one of the reasons I'm in wireless, is because wireless is not fading, it's growing. And so I know that 10 years from now, it might be a little different. I don't know, who knows, 10 years from now I could be living in my car, but for now,
It's true.
You might be living in an RV and retired, right?
That's right, absolutely. So, but for me, wireless is big. You ask people who are in storage, and 5 years ago I'd have said storage would have been just as big, but today, depends on which storage vendor you work for.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things that I sort of think about, is that when I started out, I probably wasn't thinking as much about where those industry trends are going. So around mid-2000s, I was doing a lot of networking stuff, and wireless started coming along. So I was like, that wireless, it's okay, but won't get all that involved in it. Probably should have. It's trying to. I think now I'm probably more aware of what those trends are. Just, it doesn't mean you pick it right all the time, but at least having that, just being aware of what's going on, what's interesting. Whether that was virtualization 10 years ago, whether cloud 5 years ago, or whatever the next big thing is today.
So it sounds like you're giving a piece of advice to do your homework, to be aware of what's going on in the industry as a whole, not just in your little niche of it.
No, not even just I guess not even like just the networking industry, but that broader technology. What are those macro trends that are going on? Like I say, you don't want to be the guy that's stuck doing mainframe work. It's fine if you're 3 or 4 years away from retirement. That's fantastic. But even like now, probably, all going well, I've probably got another 30 years of work ahead of me. So like I've got to be ready for that.
Yeah, I think people tend to rush things. So like if you're studying for a CCIE or something, then they forget to like study the basic TCP/IP stuff. They just want to study routing protocols, etc. But if you really like learn TCP/IP, the windowing sequences and round trip time and packet loss and everything like that, then when you learn a new technology, I mean, with all this hype about cloud, SDN, blah blah blah, it's all still running on TCP/IP. So if you really learn the fundamentals, it will be a lot easier to pick up something new as well.
Yeah, because it's all, for wired side, it's all tags and tunnels, right? No matter what comes out, you're either tagging it.
It's just a new tagging format.
So, Yvonne, I saw on the show notes something you jotted down, and I'd like to put you on the spot if you don't mind. You wrote down, oh good, you wrote down, in quotes, "Don't leave too quickly and don't stay too long." That was you, right? Yeah, that was you. What did you mean by that?
Well, so I think sometimes you get in a role, and I mean, there are absolutely times you need to go. Like you get in and just from like like if there's something immoral or illegal or unethical going on, that's one thing. But I think you have to get in a role long enough and stay there a few years, not just to like prove you can stay at a place, but to get value out of that spot. But then I also think you need to realize maybe when you've hit a barrier within that organization that you can't cross. And some of that is just because of the size of the environment that you're in or the leadership that you're working for. But don't leave too quickly, but don't stay too long. I think sometimes people get comfortable in a position either because they feel like they know what they're doing, or they're comfortable with the pay, and they miss a shift that could have moved them ahead in their career, and then they look back and they go, oh, I should have done this 2 years ago or 3 years ago and 5 years ago. And I mean, there's almost always an opportunity to correct that, but you should be thinking always about, where am I in this organization? Where's the organization going? And is it helping me get to where I want to go? And like Mathew was saying earlier, you got to kind of know where you want to go before you can do that calculus. But
so it's like that. It's like that related thing where people say, "Oh, I've got 10 years of networking experience," but they've been doing basically the same thing for the last 10 years, and really they've got 10 times 1 year of experience.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
You should never be the smartest person in the room.
Also, well, I don't ever have that problem, so
I'm the only person in this room, so like it's all right at the moment.
Both the smartest and dumbest person in that room. Yeah. So to Yvonne's point, I also think to trends, right? So when something comes out that's new and it looks interesting and it might be something you want to pursue, when it's only been in the industry for a year, and most people are not looking, well, you see it sometimes and we all laugh, but they're not looking for 10 years experience. It's easier to get in and do that thing early on than it is to do it later. Because once this thing becomes established, so we're talking about cloud, like cloud is starting to hit maturity in the sense of, we have established solutions, people are connecting to these external resources. If you were to make a shift and have never touched any type of cloud infrastructure whatsoever, but now you wanted to get into it, you're going to have an uphill battle because there's lots of people out there who've touched it and used it. If you jumped on it when it was early, nobody knew what they were doing, right? You just needed a basic technology understanding. And so I think if you see something that you really want to go after, sometimes it's better to go. We have this thing, I mean, like the other thing about not staying too long, and this is more my cynical worldview, so I apologize if this drags the entire conversation down. Technology traditionally, at least from my perspective, has a hard time promoting from within. We don't build people up and get them to the next level. We tend to bring people in because, for whatever reason, we don't respect the talent that's around us. We respect the talent that we haven't actually worked with, and that's just the way that I see the world. Every one of my significant promotions has been when I've moved from company to company. I've never had a major promotion within an organization. I've never seen any of my peers have big promotions within organizations. Most of the people I've seen who have made career advancements have happened from going to job. So I know it's a completely cynical worldview. But if you stay at a company for 10 or 15 years and you're working in technology, how motivated are you? Like, what are you doing? Because if you, unless that company's like the unicorn, right? The company that actually promotes from within, and you continue to get to work on new things, you're probably going to be stagnant. Just 2 cents there.
Depends on the company, I think.
Yeah.
But picking up a new skill like cloud or SDN or something can be really helpful for your career because you'll be an early adopter and people will want to hire you because there will be...
There's the risk though, right? Because we have a lot of trends that just kind of fizzle out.
Yeah.
So you go chasing things early. I mean, you have to take a measured approach to it. You have to say, is this something I want to do?
Sure.
And do I think it's going to live around? Because I think there's some things even that we're talking about in the networking industry now, I wouldn't be going to put my career on them.
Hang on, ATM to the desktop is making a comeback, all right? Wireless, you heard it here first.
Voice, video, and data, right? 53 bytes at a time. I think you've got to be, at least for me, I've got a wife and 2 kids that depend on me. So any decision I make in terms of my career is not on the spot. It's, if I quit a job every time I got upset, I'd be quitting every other week. And so look at trends. But honestly, I'm in the wireless space. Before that, I was in the wired networking space for years. I'm not going to jump into, cloud DBA. Let's just say cloud DBA for IoT. Let's just throw tons of buzzwords out there. And that's the new thing, and I really get excited about it. What are the odds? I mean, I do field sales engineering for a vendor. What are the odds that I'm going to jump into cloud DBA for IoT role as an early adopter, and from a total package compensation, what have you, be anywhere close if I'm starting from the ground up? And
yeah,
so
but
you get
contextually, I think Yvonne was, correct me if I'm wrong, really you're looking at strategy, right? We've talked about mentors, we've talked about looking around at trends, we've talked about what skill sets we already bring to the table and maybe need to develop. So, it's not necessarily I need to make a quantum leap from one section of the networking field to another section, or maybe it is,
Sure.
But it's
I was just saying personally, I would never, I know what you're saying about leaving one job, going to another. I'm just saying in terms of people that go chase these, I could pick on a couple of things that have happened over the past 5-10 years that people thought was going to be the next big thing. Lindsay mentioned ATM. That was kind of funny because for a couple of years we thought it was going to rule the world, and then all of a sudden it didn't. Yeah. So you just the older I get, the more careful and cautious and measured I am in terms of
that's for sure.
anything outside of the few little things that I know or can at least fumble my way through in a conversation.
So part of that's about your risk profile, and if we think about this in terms of thinking back to what do you wish you knew back when you started? Like when I started out, I was single, no children, no mortgage, no nothing. For me, at that time, I could try at something different. I could go contracting for a while. I could take a break for 6 months, 12 months. I could go back, go contracting again. I could do all of that. But yeah, as you get older, you're in a different position. You've got a house, you got kids, you got all of those sorts of things to worry about. So I guess that's one thing actually to think about is for someone starting out or a younger, so say, hey, look, you're probably in a position now where you can take more of a risk. Yeah. You can take that leap of faith or go into that unknown. Because if it all turns to custard, it's all right. It's just you. It's just you.
It all turns to custard.
I like custard.
I like custard.
Well, but so much of that, you can help mitigate that risk by doing what Daniel said earlier, and that is if you have a solid foundation and you understand fundamentals, you're going to be employable. Yeah. And so you can find a project within your organization that's more of an emerging technology and stick your toe in there maybe and see if it turns into anything. But you've still got this base of fundamentals to go back to. And so that goes into your strategic planning of your career as well too. Is like what do I know how to do that's marketable if this thing I'm trying now doesn't work out. And we all sometimes have to make those decisions, and it may not be what I want in the moment, but I'll be able to eat and try something else tomorrow.
Yeah. I have a two-pronged follow-up question then for that. The first is, what will you guys all wish you had learned as far as technical skills? And so, like, thinking about the past that you wish, therefore, you knew now, or you know now, but you wished you knew then. And then what skills would you recommend to somebody just starting out today that they pick up right away? And I mean technical skills.
Oh, I'm with Daniel on this one. Fundamentals. The stuff surrounding the fundamentals changes. We'll spend a lot of time learning the things that look sexy, right? But that's not the important stuff. The important stuff is understanding how TCP/IP works. Mm-hmm. The important thing is understanding how subnetting works. The amount of people who've worked in technology for 5-10 years who can't subnet beyond a /24 is still shocking to me. Yeah. Especially when we talk about someone who's doing networking. So like these fundamental skills, I think, are the ones that you take forward as a RFC 1925 Rule 11. We keep repeating the same things over and over again. So long as you know the fundamentals and the reason why the early stuff happened, you'll be able to kind of piece together, when something new comes out, what components of what we already done is this using, what's different, what's the little bit that changes the perspective on this new thing.
Yeah.
I think that those fundamentals need to go broader than just networking fundamentals, though.
Mm-hmm. So I agree with that.
I was lucky enough in that I came into networking from a Unix background. So I was working with HPUX and Solaris and Erix and all those sorts of systems. I came into it from that direction. And so it's funny now when I see network engineers saying, I've got to learn Linux, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, well, yeah, I actually learned that before I started this. And some of those things haven't changed either. Like obviously Linux has progressed, but VI is still, well, it's VI improved now, but it's still, those fundamentals there, things, everything's a file, all those, the basic file system stuff, all of that stuff is all, those fundamentals matter too. The other one that is just general for me is general troubleshooting stuff, like looking at logs, reading the error messages. It's surprising how many problems I can solve these days with stuff that I don't really know all that much about. When you just sort of go, okay, well, it's probably going to log something. It's probably going to be in var log something. I'll go and start there and I'll poke around there. Okay, which files have changed recently? Okay, let's have a look. There's an error message. Okay, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Just those sorts of just basics of tracking through a problem. Actually, that was one of the things that I learned early on, maybe from one of the senior engineers I work with. We work through it with network problems. Is you do simple stuff like, okay, I've got some problem, and you draw a little diagram on your whiteboard saying, here's my start point, here's my end point, here's the boxes in between. Let's sort of step through it. And like some of the senior people would be like, it's just there. Go and start looking there. It's like, well, that's okay if you know for sure what you're doing. But when you're starting out, it's really nice it's good to learn a bit of structure about what to do and say, okay, let's just plug through it. And then it works really well when you get to a problem where you've got no idea what you're doing. At least it helps you narrow things down.
Yep.
I'm going to answer the question a little in the opposite. One of the things I'm grateful for, and that is I started as a computer science major, and so I wrote C++ code, and I don't do any coding today, but the idea that coding and Python development is coming is not something that's scary to me, because I understand programming constructs, if loops, do loops, for loops, while loops, combinational logic, all that stuff. And also exactly what Lindsay was saying, that part of that was cutting my teeth in a Linux environment. And I have a teenage son who's going to college in the fall that wants to pursue technical endeavors. And I've just been encouraging him to learn Linux, just to start there, because that will help him no matter which arena he decides to go into, I believe. So I think those are beyond networking. Those are some other fundamentals that can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, we have a developing theme here, and it's all around Linux.
Well, do you think learning the logic of programming and the logic of how programs work, the logic of how the protocols work, the logic of how the underlying structure works, do you think that helps you has helped you in general?
Oh, sure. I mean, because it's all the same. I mean, when you understand
don't tell the full-time developers that. They don't like it when you tell them it's
Yeah.
But I mean, but there are functions, and when you're writing code, you compartmentalize things, and that's how we should think about how we design and architect our networks too, right? So yeah, I mean, and when you talk to guys like Russ White, he's like always talking about algorithms and how to understand algorithms, and that's understanding how the system thinks, and that can help you figure out what's going on when things go wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's also important, though, to understand kind of constraints or barriers around, what you're learning. Yes, absolutely, learn fundamentals and learn, as much as you can about your job, or go beyond your job, right? If you're doing 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, great. There's a million people doing that. You want to take things to the next level, and you got to spend some time outside of work hours. But sometimes you need mentors or more senior people to actually tell you things that aren't or not important. For example, 10 years ago, I worked for a very large hospital corporation. We had, oh goodness. Well, Yvonne, you've worked for one. You know how it goes. You have hundreds and hundreds of VPN tunnels and just thousands and thousands of switches and routers. And I got really obsessed with T1s because we had T1s all over the country. I mean, to the point to where I was getting in, I read the Matthew Gass book on T1s, the O'Reilly book that some of you have probably read. And I really got into extended super frame and started learning about which bits actually get flagged in that frame in order to indicate there's a problem with the line.
You're a sick man, Matthew.
Well, I got really excited about it, and nobody cared. My wife didn't care. My friends didn't care, and it got to the point to where one of the more senior guys at work said, "You realize that it's only in that kind of format from." Really, when it hits, the CO's equipment there, it on site, and then goes to the actual wick in the back of the router, right? You realize that it's DSL or HDSL the rest of the time, and it just kind of burst my bubble. And I thought, well, I've been spending all this time on T1s when it the extended super frame, and I could throw out all the acronyms that people love at parties like B8ZS, and it's like. Nobody cares, and so I thought, you're right, no one cares, and so I moved on to something else. Maybe it was BGP.
I'm sorry to laugh, man.
But you've hit on a really important point, though, and that's the passion. We've talked about strategy and looking for trends and doing the basics, but what if you like fish fingers in your custard? What do you like? What attracts you? What does nobody else watch Doctor Who? I'm sorry. Are there no other Doctor Who fans? But I think you can be as logical as you want, but you have to have some passion for the technology in order to keep you going those late nights.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Actually, because I've heard some people starting out say, "Oh, should I do this or that, or which one will I make the most money in?"
Sales.
Like, well, sales, yeah. But you've got to figure out which one are you actually interested in. If there's no point starting out something that you just don't care about. You've got to at least have something that excites you about it. Unless, of course, it's T1s, and then
then good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had people like going for the CCE saying that they don't like to read books, and I'm like, sorry, but you're in the wrong industry, pal. So like. If you don't want to read books, go somewhere else. IT is always learning. So.
Yeah, I teach a couple of classes at a local community college, which is profoundly meaningful to me. I love it, and I give my students. I preach to them all the time about what they should be doing outside of the school to develop their careers, because they're all getting an associate's degree. And I tell them things that both I have done and helped me to be successful, and things that I wish I did. So both of those things. So I preach to them hard: learn Linux, learn Python, learn programming languages, get straight A's. Right. And then I also tell them to own their education, that you cannot rely on your teacher, in that case me or other teachers, and then when you get your first job, you cannot rely on the professional development plan of your manager or your company or whatever, that you have to own it yourself. Now, that looks different for everybody, and that's fine, but it has to be something that is internalized. And I've had a lot of positive feedback from students that said, yeah, you're right, and then boom, went on and got a CCNA, working on a CCMP, and they're just chugging along. So those are two pieces of advice that I always give my students. One being something that I did, which was own my education early on, and the other thing that I didn't do which was learn programming languages and get very familiar with Linux, which I'm only done in the past couple of years. So
actually, that owning your career thing is an important one. No one cares about you as much as you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like doesn't matter. Like companies will tell you things. People are our most important resources. Blah 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 blah. Don't believe any of it.
You've worked in enterprise IT, haven't you?
I've worked in all sorts of industries and firms, but it's really it's like don't like your manager probably believes in you, but at the end of the day, no one cares about you as much as you.
Sure.
So
Like
you've got to take that responsibility.
Well, my wife cares about me too, and my kids do, I think.
Hopefully.
But the bottom line, you're a company of one.
Very
with
good.
one
That's
employee.
right. I'm tweeting that tomorrow, Denise, and I'm taking full credit for it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I stole it from someplace.
Oh, okay. All right. Secondary thief.
Yeah.
So, listen, we're at that time, and this has been a great discussion, guys. And I'm really glad that we had this particular group for today's topic. We've heard a couple of great themes: learn some programming languages, get familiar with Linux and navigating the file system, own your own education, find a mentor, connect with the networking community at large, whether it be through social media, and we talked about users groups. A lot of great stuff there. Some of those things we've done, some of those things we wish we did. And so there you go. Take it for what it is. But I'd like to wrap things up by thanking you, Daniel, Denise, Lindsay, and Mathew for being with us. It was really great to have you. We love to gab about technology for sure, but there's something about delving into these topics focused on our careers that we really hope helps you and is meaningful to you. So thanks also to my co-hosts Yvonne and Jordan, and let's just take a moment now for you guys to let us know where we can find you. So Yvonne, where can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm Yvonne Sharp. You can find me on my blog at esharp.net and on Twitter at Sharp Network.
Great, thanks. And Jordan, how about you?
Sure. You can find me at my blog, jordanmartin.net. I'm also at BCJordan on Twitter. And Cisco Live in 2 weeks. Find me there.
Ooh, Cisco Live in 2 weeks.
1 week.
It's one, yeah.
It's 1 week.
Not,
1 week.
Next week.
Not even 1
Next
week.
week.
Next
Oh, that's
week.
right. I leave in 2 days. Next week, not 2 weeks.
Very good.
But yeah, I'll have some Network Collective stickers. We'll be recording some episodes. So come find us. I'd love to chat with you.
Cool, thanks. So you can find me at Twitter at network_Phil, and my blog is networkphil.com. So you can find this and other video podcasts, as well as audio-only versions, if that's something that you need, on our website, thenetworkcollective.com. We're also on iTunes, Facebook, Twitter, using the handle at NetCollectivePC. And while we're at it, also check out our friends at the On-Premise IT Podcast, who just yesterday put out a great show on careers. And you can find that at gestaltit.com/podcast. So in 2 weeks, we're back at it again with episode 7, when we'll be talking about extending layer 2. But we won't be live streaming it because it's the Independence Day holiday here in the US. So we're going to pre-record that and post it at that time. So please make sure to check that out. And well, that's it for us today. So thanks so much for tuning in, and see you next time.